Okay, I think everybody is here. We're going to get started. It's 8 o'clock. Welcome. This is the webinar CRM pipelines, the what, why, and how of the pipelines and how you can use it in your organization. First things first, we're using Zoho Showtime for the webinar software. In order to use that, it's very simple. It's divided in 3 parts, the screen. On the left-hand side, you see questions, polls, chats, etc. So if you want to ask a question, just click on questions. They will be coming through to me, but they're private. So you can ask, whatever if you want to go back to something, etc. So I can actually pick that up. If I release a poll, it will show up in the polls, and the chats we don't use in this webinar today. If you want to take notes, you don't have to open a separate application to take your notes. Just enter them here where it says notes, and at the end of the webinar, when you exit, it will be emailed to you. On the right-hand side, you have a list of all the slides that have currently been presented, so you can always move back into the presentation. You can't move forward, but you can move back and then go back to where the presenter is at the moment. So that's on the right-hand side, and on the left, in the middle, that's when you see the actual presentation here. So let's first do a quick poll. Are we good to continue? Everybody can hear me. Is there any questions? So just answer poll. Okay, the answers are coming in. All right, we're good to continue. So first, a bit of an introduction. Who am I and why am I doing this? So I am a Zoho partner. Aurelian Group is a Zoho partner. We've been a partner for just over a year now. But I've got 25 years of experience in business applications, from very large to very small implementations. And very large, we're talking about multi-million dollar deals, international global rollouts. And very small is my smallest customers, one person. And what you see is that a lot of it actually is in common, and obviously there are some differences there as well. I've worked in many industries, telco, insurance, manufacturing, service industry, and also across many countries. I now help and particularly focus on small and mid-sized businesses. My specialty is startups, but also businesses that up to 50 to 60, maximum 100 employees. And I want to be, them to be successful with the applications they have. We offer implementations as well as support, and we bring the community together with a Aurelian Group membership, which starts at $25 per month, and that's aimed at the startups. And there are various tiers of membership that gives you different discounts as well. And that's me today. Winter has come here in Sydney. I should have put up a picture of the Night King. It is really cold today. We had a cold snap, cold for Sydney weather. So I hope you're all comfortable and the heater is on in your house. And let's get started. All right, who needs a pipeline anyway? Well, first of all, what is a pipeline? So a pipeline transports, liquid from one place to the next, in mostly oil, or it could be water. So in CRM, it transports your deals from the marketing funnel and then all the way to the contract, where you actually sold something. So the stages in between, we call them pipeline stages. It's sometimes called a funnel because it's large at the top and small at the bottom, because you lose deals. And that's the second point here. Pipelines tend to leak. You will lose a percentage of deals along the way, and that is fine. Actually, a good salesman sells the deal, but a great salesman knows when to qualify out and disengage, so that the great salesman can focus on more deals and bring more to a sale. So it is okay that things will fall off the pipeline, but you do need to have a consistency there, and that's what we're talking about today. Now, what you're measured on as sales, in sales management, speed. Like, how long does it take me to get a deal from the top of the pipeline to the actual signed order, and how many of them can I do at the same time? So that's the velocity and throughput. So those are, for sales managers, the key metrics. So what is the pipeline? Also called the sales funnel. It starts here at the top where it says leads. So the marketing efforts that you do, their task is to fill this funnel. And not just with names, with qualified leads. In other words, if you have maybe 10,000 leads in here, but still only have 10 customers, you don't have a qualified lead funnel, right? It becomes just a numbers game, statistics. A great industry that works that way is the spam that you get, right? Most people, you didn't ask for it, but most people don't click it. But there's a very, very few that do, and we're talking about points of a percent. Now, with points of a percent, if you send that email out 1,000,000 times, that's still a large number of people that fall for the trap. So if you have a low qualification pipeline or low qualification leads, you need a lot of them to get actually some customers. Professional sales and trustworthy sales, you have qualified leads. And it's not about the quantity of leads that are here in the top of the funnel. That's first and foremost. It is how much percent of those leads actually become customers. Rule of thumb is you should be aiming for at least 20%. Obviously, you could do better. Depends on the industry that you're in and how competitive it is. But if you're at like a 5% or 2%, you really need to look at your qualification methods. Now, in between, there are other stages, and every stage you will lose some deals, right? So if something starts as a lead or a suspect or a prospect and you qualify, maybe 80% will fall off, right? Or 50% will fall off, or whatever it is. The truth of it is 20%, or as an industry standard, of the leads in the top of the pipeline actually go through as customers. In this case, it's 1%, which is again not very well qualified. So you weight the values of that in each funnel stage by the number on average that go through to a deal. So your sales tasks, every time you speak to a customer, you have a sales task. You want to go to the next stage. So your task is to go the deal either to the next stage or disengage. Both of them are good outcomes. Best outcome, obviously, keep engaging until the sale. But if sale is unlikely, disengage is a great decision. The purpose is to get as many deals through the funnel. It is a numbers game. If you got 1,000 leads in the top and 10 customers in the bottom, you need to get, in order to grow with that pipeline and without changing your qualification, you need 10,000 leads to get 100 customers. Flip side, if you get 1,000 leads but you qualify twice as good, so for the same 1,000 leads, you get 20 customers out of it. That means you actually have a lot less leakage and also a lot less wasted effort from the salespeople to follow up on people that are never willing to buy. So what stages should you have? The funnel that I showed in the previous slide doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a few decision factors, right? So first of all, is it a simple process that you have or a complex process, right? So simple process, think of it as something that you just can buy as an impulse. All retail stores generally run a simple process. You go into the store, you buy the candy bar, or you don't. There's not really anybody there that puts it in CRM that you're looking at a candy bar, right? Because there's very few people involved in the decision-making process. It's low risk for you. And so that's an impulse buy. So there's no deal stages there. But anything that becomes a little bit more complicated, and that doesn't have to be business to business, can also be business to consumer. Think about buying a house, think about buying a car, think about buying a new air conditioning unit in your house, or getting that pool installed. There's multiple decisions that you do in order to come to the right decision, and not only which pool do I buy from which vendor or which pool builder, but you're also competing against, well, I'm not buying a pool at all, or I'm buying it next year. So those processes tend to be a little bit more complex. And then you have multiple influences as well. So staying in the personal, the private space, you got the family, you got the spouse, you got the kids. There's probably an advisor around real estate, like, okay, your value of your house goes up or down, whatever it is. Now in the business, you also have the buyer, you got the buying office, you got the procedures, you have the person who's actually obtaining value from your goods or service. So there's multiple decision makers involved, and then it becomes a complex process with multiple stages. So look for your business, what type of stage you're looking at. Now, let's assume we got a reasonably complex sales cycle, because if we do only sell the Mars bars in the retail store, you're in the wrong webinar. But if you do a reasonably complex sales cycle with at least two or three stages that you need to go through, the question then is, okay, how do I set up these stages? What is the right way to do this? Now, there's two schools of thought here. One of them is activity focused. So you look in your sales stage, like if my salesperson or sales team has done these activities, then it moves to the next phase. Right? Then it's in the next stage. Or disqualify, right? Qualify out. The other school of thought is like, well, if my customer gives me a certain indication or has done a certain activity and comes back with that communication, then it moves to the next stage. From my personal experience, I think the one from the customer side, so customer gate focused, is better. I'll give you an example. Let's take two deals that are in the negotiate stage. One of them is you're negotiating with the customer. That's an activity from your salesperson. The second one is on the customer gate focus. The customer negotiates with you. In other words, they say, hey, I really like what you're offering me. I've evaluated the solution. I'm looking at proposal. You're actually the one that's preferred, but you're slightly over budget. So what can we do from a budgeting perspective? That's a different signal than if you get like, well, I'm now with the customer and they have got a quote and they're negotiating with other vendors and they need to go underneath that because that becomes a price trap. You're going negotiate hard on price, but you actually already have lost the deal on all the other marks to your competitors. So you try to bring it back in pricing. So from that case, your percentage of closure will be lower if you initiate the negotiation versus if the customer initiated, because the customer's hearts and minds are set on your solution and they just try to find out if they can maneuver it in such a way that it comes into their budget. Whereas in the example where you do the activity of negotiating, you're just trying to undercut your competitor, and the customer may have their hearts and minds set on that competitor, but you just make your solution more appealing by negotiating on price. So it's kind of like clutching at straws to win the deal. Now, when you set up your sales stage, another thing is you need to be very clear on what you're selling. And we know that, but more important than that is to know what your customer is buying, right? And they're not necessarily the same. Now, I mentioned the candy bar earlier, right? In the retail store, if I'm the buyer in the retail store, for me, that's an impulse buy. I buy the product. I buy, a certain amount of satisfaction. That's it. But it's an impulse buy. But now look at it from the manufacturer or the distributor side from the candy bar. And they're selling it to the retail store. What are they selling? They're actually not selling the product. They're not selling the candy bar. The candy bar is a vehicle to achieve something for the retailer. Typically, now where do you find the candy bars? You find the bags of candy bars with lots of them in the side, right? You find those in the normal areas where all the other goods are, and it's like, okay, we're gonna buy candy bars. It's kind of like a directed buy. They tend to be slightly lower margin. But if you go to the cash register, what do you see there? Is candy bars. You see the mints, all individually packaged. That's where the supermarket makes their money, right? They're much higher margin. They take very little space. Everybody passes past the checkout, at least you hope, otherwise they're stealing from your store. So everybody passes there, and the candy bars are put on eye height of toddlers to preteens, right? I mean, it's basically you want the kids to say, I want that, I want candy. And that's where the margin is in. Now, they keep the prices low, so relative, usually just below the $5, like $3 or $4. But the margins are very high. Now, you buy 1 or 2 or 3 candy bars in a transaction. It doesn't sound like a lot of money. But if 1 in every 10 customers buys a candy bar, that becomes a very high margin driver. So what you're actually selling them is margin. You're also selling them the brand. The brand is, a particular brand that people like from TV. They focus on that. It's easier to buy. They recognize it. But also, it's a brand that's known for putting a little toy or a sticker or whatever it is for kids in the candy bar, so kids actually pull towards it. But you're also buying is consistency. You supply consistently. You make sure that there's always something at the cash register. But also, it looks consistent. people can recognize it. That means so you look consistency from brand, you look consistency from the margin, you look at consistency from the logistics. So be very clear what you're selling. So the same product of a candy bar has a very different buying decision process from the retailer perspective as it does from the consumer perspective. So it's not enough to know, hey, I'm selling candy bars. It is, what is my customer actually buying? And once you understand what a customer is buying, you can see and ask, hey, who's in the buying team? Like who is affected by this decision, right? What problem am I solving? Who else is having that problem? If I solve that problem for that person, what does that mean? And etc. So you're basically selling on value. So I hope that's clear on the margin. Yes, that happens for service as well. Sorry, I got a question here. If this is only for products, like in retail, but does it also happen for B2B products and services? Take, for instance, software. There's actually a very good example. A lot of I would call the more junior salespeople sell software based on the features. No one buys software on the features. People used to buy that software on the problem that it solves, right? It's kind of like the stage 2 of buying. Stage 1 buying is I buy features. Stage 2 buying is I solve a problem. And stage 3 buying is I'm buying value. So the savvy salesperson goes into the customer and say, well, by using this software, we're able, let's say it's help desk software, we're able to cut your call to resolution time by 50%, and we increase your first touch resolutions. In other words, the customer logs the call, and in one time it is resolved. We increase that by another 30%. That you can cost, and you can say this is actually saving you this much money. And because the customer is more satisfied, it also increases your customer retention, which is cheaper for sales. So that's when you're selling on value, instead of saying, oh yeah, my solution has tickets and it has a knowledge base, and you can follow it up and put in service level agreements. That's great, but no one buys that. What they buy is, okay, what do I get for value? So that's how we sell things, and that's how I understand what the customer is buying. But it also means, in the same scenario on that software, is if you sell to a company, to the CIO or the IT manager, you can sell on features with the IT manager. But the IT manager is going to say, just compare apples with apples, right? It's, oh, I get the other features and they're cheaper. But if you start selling to the support department owner, right, or the manager of support department who was working for the budget, add to that the CFO, because if the support department can do with less, right, they actually also solving a problem for the CFO, because there's more money to be distributed across the whole company. If you have happier customers that have a quicker response, you're actually now also selling that value to the sales managers. That means you build an army of influencers for your solution, because you're selling on value and not on the features. So I hope that's clear. Okay. All right, so a pipeline. There are 2 pipelines in a CRM. Now, typically you only configure one, but I'm personally, I actually have those 2 next to each other. And why is that? So the first one is pipeline by count. That simply counts the number of deals in a certain stage. Now, because we already expect that out of all these deals here, we know that maybe 10% will sign, or 20%, right? Whatever your percentages are, and you need to investigate that and try it out and run the data. So that means I need to have a lot of deals here. If these deals are getting declining, because the task for marketing is to fill this funnel, the task of sales is to empty it, right? So if that becomes shrinking, you probably have a marketing problem. If your deals start expanding in one of those areas, so you get kind of like, instead of a funnel, you get a pear-shaped funnel, then you have a throughput problem. Like, okay, is there a bottleneck? Do I need to hire more product specialists, if it's a very specific product? Do I need to hire more engineers that can help sell this from an engineering perspective? Do I have enough salespeople to clear the backlog? Are my salespeople trained enough to actually bring the solution to the customer? So the pipeline tells you a lot of things from the by count, and typically you would say, okay, it has to be a funnel. I know I'm going to lose a number of deals at each stage. And obviously you want to have as many deals as you can in the bottom stage, so you want them. but it's not like it's going from, the bottom stage is let's say 10%, and then it goes to 15% that's in here, and then 5% here, because that 5%, you're going to lose some deals. So that means in a few months or a few weeks, depending on how long your pipeline lasts, the throughput, the velocity, you're going to have less deals won. So you can predict your sales with this. On the other side, you have a pipeline by value, and it's important that's a weighted value. So what's a weighted value? You take the total value of the deals in that stage times the percent chance of winning that deal. So the higher you are in the funnel, the lower the chance is. So what typically happens is the value of the deals is reasonably consistent through all the stages. So you can see here in the value of the deals, am I running something consistent here? Now I'll give you another example. If you have in the second stage a value that is equal to the top stage, etc., and the bottom stage, so it's all fine, it's all weighted, so that's correct. But on the flip side, on the by count, you have a lot less deals in that stage there. That means you got one deal that is outside of the margin of error, right? You got a very large deal in there. That means you may actually, still do okay on your sales, provided that deal closes. So you got a lot of risk in your pipeline. So that's why I show those two next to each other. And if you have a lot of deals, I recommend you do it. If you're a small business and you only have very few deals, just pick the value one, because you can't run statistics on a very small sample. So look for the Arnold Schwarzenegger pipeline, the inverted triangle. The pear-shaped one, and I've put the picture of Al Bundy there, you got a problem. Usually a marketing problem, but also if your marketing is still giving you the qualified leads, check if they're really qualified. If you lose too much in the first stage, check your marketing. But if you start losing them in third and fourth stages with disproportional, you have a sales problem. It could either be a bottleneck or not enough people. Okay, so just to summarize, you got pipeline by count, lots of deals at the top, few deals below, and simply count the number of deals, right? Just simply count them. Don't do any mathematics on it. The pipeline by value, you take the total values of all deals in the pipeline. So if you got 5 deals of $200,000 in the pipe, that is $1 million. But then multiply that with the chance of winning in that stage. So if that stage is the top stage, let's say that's 20% on average goes to a sale. That's 5 times 200,000 million times 20% back to 200,000, right? Because 1 in 5 you only win. So how do you set it up in Zoho? So if you go to Zoho, and if you don't use Zoho, this is where you can either look here and see how it's configured when you make your buying decision on how this is going to add value to you, and I'm happy to put that in the pipeline. If you use something else and you just want to see how pipelines go, you can stick around, or this is the point where you can say, they've seen enough, I'm not using it. But if you do intend to use Zoho, or you use it already, go to settings, which is the spanner and the screwdriver here on the top, and then select under customization here, the modules and fields. Now in the module fields, now I'm just assuming for now to keep it very simple, and you only have one sales funnel. Not every company has one sales funnel. You can have multiple. Think about a large machine, let's say a drilling rig for in the desert, which costs you like $2 or $3 million. That's one sales pipeline, but the spare parts have a different sales pipeline. So look at your business and say, okay, what are the pipelines I need to have? But let's assume for this exercise, we only have one. So you click on the 3 dots next to deals, and then select stage probability mapping. So what you do in stage probability mapping is you give the stages a name. Those are the stages in the funnel. And then you map the probability of winning that deal against each stage. So the first one, needs analysis, here is mapped 20%, value proposition 40. So for those of you paying attention and using Zoho, these are the standard stages in Zoho. I do not recommend keeping them unless you've never used the pipeline before and you have no idea what to do. Then try it out, but they're not great. Okay. So you have the stage and the probability, but you see here is forecast type open, closed won, and closed lost. What you need to enter here is for every stage that you deal is still in play. So you haven't qualified out, you haven't won it, you haven't lost it. Set it to open, so it counts in your sales forecast. Then the forecast category is pipeline. Right, so keep it at that. The only deals that are different is the ones that you've won. you set that to closed won and set the percentage probability to 100%. And then the forecast category to close, because won deals, they already show up in your sales figures, not in the. So if you put them in the forecast still, you have sales and forecast, you're counting yourself rich. The same with close lost, but then you put it on 0 probability. It's close lost and it's omitted. So you don't see it in your won deals and you do not see it in your pipeline. So those things are important. It's that simple to map it. So the next time you go to your deals, you see the stages here. So this is a deal here as an example with the standard stage. You see the stages here on the top with the green dots are already completed. The green tick marks, the green dot is where you are, and here the gray ones is where you can go. You can click directly here anywhere in this in these stages to change them. You can go move back and forth if you do not use Blueprint. So in this webinar, we're not talking about Blueprint. But if you do not use Blueprint, you can just go anywhere in the sales stages. You can also change them here in the stage itself. There's a pick list. So whatever is easier for you. And when you move it from one stage to the next, what you will see is that the expected revenue here will change based on whatever is the expected sales, which is 35,000 for this deal, times the percentage of that stage. So in this case, with the weighted revenue of this deal is 31,500. Again, on a single deal, that makes not so much sense. But if you have multiple deals in there, and we know that so much percent of them will go through, all of a sudden the calculation in your sales forecast becomes uncanny accurate, depending obviously on the discipline of your salespeople. So if you do have multiple pipelines, you set up by sales stage. You do that here. So you select your probability mapping, that I just opened. It's standard layout versus the other layouts that you have. Now, what's important is that you do not rename whatever's in the standard layout. So they will be automatically copied, but do not rename them because they are across every deal. So if I rename needs analysis here to initial qualification, what will happen is it will also be initial qualification in whatever sales pipeline that is used. So what you actually have to do is use the plus and minus button. So you with the minus here on this, on this side here, you remove the sales stage from this particular mapping. It's still in the other one. And then with the plus, you create your custom sales stage. So that's how you do that. So do not override the existing stages, and then you have your multiple pipelines. I see a question coming in. Okay, so the question is, if you have multiple layouts and multiple sales stages and multiple processes, do I then also need to have multiple pipeline funnel reports? There's kind of two answers on this. So yes, you do if you want to map by, because the product groups are probably significantly different in the buying process. So I gave you the example of the hydraulic drilling rig. The drilling rig for, let's say, portable drilling rig, that's millions of dollars. That pipeline is very long, very complex. Whereas the spare parts is very short. So the whole sales forecasting mechanism is different. So in that case, I would say yes, you would have different pipelines. But if you can combine the value pipeline as well, because that gives you like a forecast on the new work sold that's coming in. So whatever you're going to sell this month or next month, etc. So in those cases, those values are correct. But it would be good from a sales management perspective to have those different pipelines split out, because some of those deals are in the second stage for maybe 100 days. And that's totally normal. Whereas in other deals, it's in the second stage for 10 days and you've kind of lost it. The salespeople sleep at the wheel. So in that case, from an operational sales management, you split them out. Usually they're handled by different sales teams anyway. But from a forecasting, financial forecasting, your business and sales, you add them together. Okay. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, then this actually concludes the webinar on the pipelines and how you set it up. So if you do like webinars like this, watch out for more announcements. They will be on LinkedIn and on the social channels, as well as on the blog of Aurelian Group on the website. You can join them for free. Some of them will be paid. That will be announced as well. If you want all webinars for free, you can become a member, and there are some